Alright pilots, Nick's back here with another video. Today we're going to be in the F-16 Viper, the Block 50 Viper in DCS. We're going to be working on taxi, takeoff, flight, and landing. So let's jump into the cockpit here. We're already fired up, we're already fully aligned and ready to go. Let's do some quick keybinds for you really quick. It's going to be your normal flight keybind, so if you have a HOTAS, you're going to want to go into your axis commands under the F-16C and get your pitch and roll on your stick. You should go ahead and get your slew button for later videos. You'll want your pedals for your rudder or whatever axis you use for your rudders, and I do recommend using an axis. Push button on rudders is pretty rough. Then of course your throttle. If you do not have a HOTAS, you can come down here to flight control not the panel but the control, and you've got your aircraft bank and pitch and rudder. You can push button those. Also into the flight controls, this is where you're going to put your trim hat. And if you have a keyboard, this is where you're going to input your trim buttons. You can also put your throttle in here if you don't have a throttle. Alright, let's go to the regular commands now. So you're going to want to brake. Got to have brakes. You're going to want, let's see actually here with the F-16. You got your brakes. Your flaps in the F-16 are automatic, so you don't have to worry about those. Trim hat. You're going to want your landing gear, of course. So I just have a 1 button, so landing gear handle up and down, so 1 push button, that's all I need. And just for taking off and landing, that's going to be almost all you need. Just an air brake here now. So I've got it on a 2-way for extend and retract. And when you're landing in the Viper, you pretty much generally always have your air brake out for landing, mainly because the Viper is such a speed demon. It's such a lightweight little stunt fighter that it can be kind of hard to slow down at times. Just to get your speed down to a manageable speed to where you can get your gear out to further drag you down, it can be a pain. And it's a lot easier to have an air brake out and then power into the air brake to maintain speed than it is to lose speed without the air brake out. Alright, let's jump back into the cockpit. Oh, just so I always forget this one, but you're going to want this one right here. So this is your AR MSL step button. It's also the nose wheel steering button. So when you're on the ground, that is your nose wheel steering button. So right here you can see you've got your AOA indexer for landing. And over here, this is lights, and if you hit your nose wheel steering button, it says AR nose wheel steering, and that is going to allow your rudder pedals to direct your front wheel to steer. And if you hit it again, it shuts it off. So like any other plane, when you're taxiing around, you're gonna have your nose wheel steering on, and when you start your run down the runway, you might have it on for a little bit, but as soon as you get up to about 60-70 knots, you're going to turn it off so that you have more control of your plane taking off. At high speeds, you don't want your nose wheel steering on, because you don't want to start giving it some rudder and it turn that wheel and give you a real bad day. Alright, so parking brake is off. We're on anti-skid now, so you can have your parking brake on like that, but we're getting ready to go. Nose wheel steering on. We're going to give it just a little bit of throttle, because you'll start rolling real quick in the Viper. Then I'll go right back to neutral, and I'm going to use my rudders to steer our jet over to the runway. So as we're steering over, there's really nothing to taxi in the Viper, except for, like most planes, I'll tell you, don't overspeed, don't get going really fast on the ground. And really in the Viper, that's a big deal, because it'll nose over really hard. So if you turn, and you turn quickly, and you're going not even that fast, you're not going very fast at all, what will happen is when you turn, that right wing or left wing, depending on which way you're turning, is going to dip down into the ground, and your nose is going to go right into the concrete. It's really easy to do. So never get going really fast in the Viper on the ground when you're taxiing, and when you're going to turn, slow down. If you think you're going a little quick before you start turning, just put some pressure on your wheel brakes. So this is about as fast as I ever taxi the Viper right here, and I'm in idle. I got it going a little bit fast, then I go right back to idle. It really is a speed demon. I'm going to give it a little brake pressure before we get up here to turn onto the runway. So taking off the Viper, depending on your loadout, you can go full blower to get up. I don't recommend using full blower unless you need to, for a multitude of reasons. Mainly you can overspeed your gear if you're not careful and damage your gear trying to take off. Also, the fuel efficiency of the Viper is actually pretty good until the blower's on. When the blower's on, you're going to jump up to like 55,000 pounds of fuel an hour, and you're just going to suck all that dinosaur right out of your tank. So we're pretty light. We're just going to do a mil power takeoff. Checking my controls, everything's good. I'll leave the nose wheel steering on for now. But once I get going in speed, I'm going to turn it off pretty quick to make sure I've got that good rudder control to stay straight on the runway. So I'm going to bring my throttle up to the detent to go to blower, then I'm going to pull it back off that detent, and that'll be just mil power. And we're just going to leave it there to take off. We're going to rotate at about 150 knots, and we'll gain lift at 150 pretty darn quick. You can even start rotating at 140, 145. Either way, you're going to start pulling lift at 150 plus. So here we go. There's the detent. Pull it back. We're spooled up. We let off the brake. So now we're just using the rudders to stay straight on the runway. Piece of cake. Now you can see with that nose wheel steering on, it's drastic. So now I'm going to turn it off, and now I'm just using a lot more rudder now to keep it on the runway. It's a lot more gradual. That's why you want the nose wheel steering off. We're rotating. Nose is up. Now I'm just holding the nose at that angle. We're up. We're going to pull the gear up now. And I'm pushing forward on the stick now because I don't want to climb too quick. I want to maintain just maybe 5 degrees or so. Let our gear come all the way up. And our gear wasn't coming up. I was wondering why the handle wasn't up in the lights, but there we go. Now our gear's up. So the landing gear on the Viper is 300 gears. So that means if you're at 300 knots or below, you can bring your gear out. You don't want to bring your gear out going faster than that because you can overspeed the gear. The wind going over the tires is going to start spinning those tires, and you'll blow the rubber out. Alright, so driving the Viper, once you're in the air, like a lot of the other modern jets, you don't have to worry about your rudder that much when you're flying. You can just use your roll and pitch. So we can roll her over, and we can start pulling back on the stick a little bit. And you can see we got up to 550 knots pretty quickly, and we're still off that detent. We're just flying around at mil power. It really is a speed demon. And once you're up to speed and you're cruising, you can save a lot of fuel by bringing your throttle way back. You can see right now we're still pulling a decent amount of fuel flow at mil power. But once you get up to speed and you're cruising straight and you're not maneuvering, it'll run for a while. You won't blow through all your fuel too quick. Once you go into blower, though, you're going to go through your fuel really quick, which we'll do here in just a second. Let's spot our runway and see where we are. There's the runway right over there. We don't want to get too far away because we're going to land in a minute, but there you go. Look, we're 600 knots. We're still in mil power. So let's hit the blower. And now watch that fuel flow go up. We're up to 80,000 pounds an hour. We're maxed out on the fuel flow. And you can see we're already at Mach 1.0, well actually 1.1 now, so we are moving. So we're going to come off that fuel now and go idle. It's going to take us a little bit to slow down. Runway is right over here. We're going to come back around. We're going to do an on-speed landing. So the difference between something like the Hornet when you're coming in to land is the Viper's a little bit more tricky because it's not a Navy jet. There was only one Navy Viper, and it was used as a Red 4 trainer. So it was a gutted Viper that they used as an oppressor. So the gear is really close together, and it's a lot more brittle because it's not made to land on a carrier. It's not made to be flopped on the ground with a lot of force. It's made to land more traditionally on a nice flat runway with a nice float and flare landing. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to set up on speed, and then when we get closer to the runway, we're going to flatten out. We're going to flare a little bit, and we're going to go idle and let it float down nice and naturally. Also, the brakes in the Viper are not the best. So once you get better at it, you're going to start learning how to lay it down really light and keep the nose up in the air after your rear wheels come down. And it's called aero braking. You're going to keep the nose up for as long as you can and let it come down naturally, which can be all the way down to 100 knots before that nose comes down. Alright, so we're making our turn towards the runway. We're not going through any landing patterns or anything like that. We're just going to line up with the runway, get set up on speed, then we're going to gauge if we need to come down a little bit higher in altitude before we sit in the pocket of on speed and ride the glide slope in. So we'll get our gear out, we'll get an E-bracket, we'll line up, and then we're going to trim the nose into the E-bracket like we would with any other on-speed. If you don't understand on-speed, watch my video with on-speed, please. It'll explain a whole lot and make you a much better pilot when it comes to landing. So I'm not going to go through the entirety of on-speed for this. I'm just going to kind of explaining it while I'm doing it. Alright, there's the airfield over here. And you can see I'm still almost off the throttle completely, and I was able to speed up to 350 knots. So speed is not a problem with the Viper. Neither is maneuverability. Once you get used to flying this, you can pull a lot of G's in the Viper. It's a great airframe and it's very maneuverable. Alright, we're back to idle. I'm going to bring the air brake out now. When you're landing the Viper, always have your air brake out. It's a lot easier to push against the air brake than it is a lot easier to push on the air brake with your throttle than it is to try to slow a Viper down with nothing. Alright, we overshot our starting, which is fine. I kind of want to do that because I want to show you don't have to be perfect. You can start getting set up for on speed, which we're at 200. We're below 300. We can bring the gear out now, so let's go ahead and do that. Because that's going to give us more drag and allow us to control our speed a lot more. So we're just going to line up to the left of the runway here, and I'm going to start trimming the nose up to get set up on speed. But I'm also going to push it forward a little bit on the stick because I want to lose some altitude because we're a little high. And I'm flying to the left of the runway, and I'll gradually bring it back to the right to get lined up on the runway. And there's our speed coming down now. And we're down in the E bracket. And we're going to start introducing a little bit of fuel. And we're still going to keep flying to the left side of the runway as we're making our way towards it. And you can see we're close to on speed now, but our flight vector is very low, so we don't want to run this glide slope in, right? But I'm still kind of working my altitude down, and that's why it looks a little weird, but we'll get it all lined up before we're landing. We're still making our way to the left side of the runway now. And I'm just using the throttle to maintain that velocity vector. Alright, so now we're almost straight on the runway, so now we're just going to line up to the very left of the runway. And now we're going to trim the rest of our way onto speed. And you can see we're still a little off speed because we're a little fast by our indexer. Now we're right. We're now on speed. Now we're a little fast. Alright, now we're about straight. We're going to maintain our on speed. We're going to use our throttle to make sure our vector stays out in front of us and we're not coming in too steep. And now we're going to flare just a little bit and we're going to go to idle. We're just going to let it, I'm just holding it now, level with the runway and letting it come down naturally. Now I'm going to hold the nose up. You got to be real careful when you're holding your nose up though. If you hold it up too high, you're going to tail strike. So you'll just practice, you'll get used to this. Now the nose come down naturally. And now we can just start giving a little bit of brake pressure. And we just want to hold back on that stick because those two big stabs back there are basically giant brakes. So right now I'm not even using the brakes, I'm just holding back on the stick, keeping the elevators flared up. Now there's a turnoff coming up ahead, so now I'm going to add a little bit more brake pressure. We're below 70 knots, I'll turn on the nose wheel steering, and now my hands are off the controls. Brakes, we want to turn off right here. So you see the brakes are not the best, which is why you aero brake. But that is how you line the Viper. It can be hard when you're first doing it, just like everything else in a jet. The more you do it, the easier it gets, and after a while you'll be a little confused about why it was so hard at first. But it might take a little while to get there sometimes, especially with the Viper, because you are basically landing a big old missile. But you saw me do it just now. Very, very easy to do once you're used to it. The trick is just be slow, be smooth, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Don't get panicky. Get lined up with the runway. Get yourself kind of set up for on speed, and then start gauging how high you are up in the air. Bring your altitude down so you're not coming in so steep, because if you're on speed but you're really high, then your velocity vector is going to be pointing you coming down at a very high rate, and that'll be bad. So you want to come in flatter. So just get set up on speed, get lined up, work your altitude down, and then just right before you get to the runway, make sure you're right up on speed. Give it a little bit of flare at the end and go to idle and let the rear come down nice and naturally and soft. It's a piece of cake. Don't worry about how fast you're moving unless you're hauling butt. But if you're set up on speed, then your air speed, not your on speed, but your air speed is going to be exactly what it needs to be to land softly. So, pilots, I really hope you enjoy this Viper. It is an amazing jet. It is a jack of all trades and an ace of a few. And it's really worth owning and learning. It's really good, especially for SEAD. It is my favorite bird for doing anti-rads with, shooting at enemy radars and SAMs. It's very good at it with its ELANT pod and its AGM-88s. So again, get out there, pilots, start flying, do your takeoffs, do your landings. You will become a pro in no time, and you will be blasting your enemies out of the sky and covering your wingmen's butts. This is Nix, signing off, and I will see you guys in the skies.